The morning Emeka left the village, he made promises that tasted like honey on his lips. 1 year in Lagos, he told Sandra, pressing his forehead against hers, just 1 year, and I'll return to build us a proper house with running water and electricity. His hands, still calloused from farm work back then, cupped her face gently as he kissed each of their 4 children goodbye. Sandra believed every word. For the first 6 months, Emeka kept his promises. Money orders arrived regularly, first 20,000 naira, then 50,000. Sandra bought new school uniforms for the children, paid their fees in advance, and even started a small provision store near the market. The villagers praised her hard-working husband. Emeka is doing well in Lagos, they would say, nodding approvingly. Then the payments became irregular. The excuses began. The business needs more capital, Emeka would say during their weekly phone calls, his voice crackling over the poor network connection. My partner ran off with some money. Then the calls became fortnightly. Then monthly. Then they stopped altogether. Sandra's provision store collapsed when she couldn't afford to restock. Chidi, their eldest at 12, had to drop out of school when the fees ran out. 9-year-old Ada stopped asking for new shoes. 6-year-old Obi stopped asking when his father was coming home. Little Amara, just 3, barely remembered the man whose photo hung above their rusted zinc roof bed. The worst wasn't the poverty, Sandra had known hunger before. The worst were the whispers. The market women's knowing glances. The neighbor's sudden silence when she approached. Even her own sister couldn't look her in the eye. Men don't stay gone that long unless they've found something better, her mother had said bluntly during one of her rare visits. Then came the day that shattered Sandra's last illusions. Grace, her neighbor's daughter who worked in Lagos, came home for Christmas with a smartphone full of pictures. Auntie Sandra, she said hesitantly, I think you should see this. The photo showed Emeka at a Lagos nightclub, his gold watch gleaming under the strobe lights, his arm draped possessively around a light-skinned woman in a tight red dress that left little to imagination. The caption read, celebrating my engagement to the love of my life. #blessed #Lagos Big Boy. That night, Sandra took Emeka's favorite shirt, the one he'd left behind, the one she'd kept carefully folded beneath her pillow for 2 years, and burned it in the cooking fire. The flames licked at the fabric like vengeful spirits, turning the memories to ashes. The bus to Lagos smelled of sweat, stale meat pies, and hopelessness. Sandra clutched her children's hands as hawkers banged on the windows at every stop, their voices blending into a cacophony of desperation. Pure water. Groundnuts. Phone chargers. The children pressed their faces against the dirty glass, equal parts terrified and fascinated by the world rushing past. At the all stopover, their journey nearly ended before it truly began. Armed men with scarves covering their faces stormed the packed vehicles. Everybody down. This is a robbery. Sandra shoved the children to the floor, covering Amora's small body with her own. A gunman yanked her up by her hair, his breath reeking of cheap gin and decay. Where's your money, woman? I have nothing, she whispered, her voice steadier than she felt. The robber tore open her bag, scattering its meager contents across the bus floor. His dirty fingers closed around the wedding invitation she'd gotten from Grace's cousin, the one with the date, time, and location of Emeka's new life. The man laughed, reading it aloud mockingly. Oya, go meet your husband at the Grand Diamond Hotel. But first. His hands grabbed at her blouse, the buttons popping under his rough handling. Chidi moved faster than lightning. The 12-year-old launched himself at the robber, sinking his teeth into the man's hairy arm like a wild animal. The robber screamed, pistol whipping the boy across the face. Blood sprayed across the bus seats as Chidi collapsed. Sandra's scream brought the bus driver running back, his own machete drawn. Leave my passengers alone. As the robbers fled with their meager haul, Sandra pressed her wrapper to Chidi's split eyebrow, her tears mixing with his blood. We are going back home, she sobbed, rocking her whimpering son. This was a mistake. Chidi gripped her wrist with surprising strength, his eyes blazing through the blood. No, Mama, he gasped. We find Papa. He needs to see what he did. Lagos swallowed them whole, the stench of gutter waste mixing with the tantalizing aroma of frying akara. Sandra's heart pounded as Danfo buses screeched past, their conductors hanging precariously from open doors, shouting destinations she didn't understand. One bus nearly clipped Obi's arm as the 6-year-old reached for a fallen puff-puff on the busy sidewalk. They slept at a motor park that first night, huddled between trucks like stray dogs. A kind trader took pity on them and gave them leftover momo wrapped in banana leaves. In the morning, Sandra's purse was gone, stolen as they slept, taking with it nearly half their remaining money. The Grand Diamond Hotel rose before them like a mirage, its glass facade reflecting the harsh Lagos sun. Sandra smoothed down the children's rumpled clothes, their best outfits, now stained from the journey. The security guards took one look at their dusty feet and worn sandals and blocked the entrance with crossed arms. Wedding is by invitation only, the taller guard sneered, his eyes lingering uncomfortably on Sandra's chest. Sandra's knees hit the marble steps with a painful thud. Please, she begged, her voice breaking, my husband is the groom. The guards exchanged glances. One whispered to the other, Madam Adanna will skin us alive if. Amora chose that moment to dart between their legs, her tiny feet slapping against the red carpet as she sprinted toward the decorated archway. Papa! Papa! The ballroom fell silent as the toddler crashed into Emeka's legs, smearing chocolate from a stolen puff-puff on his pristine white abode. Sandra would never forget the look on his face in that moment, not guilt, not shame, but pure, unadulterated rage. Adanna's scream shattered the stunned silence. Who are these people? Sandra stepped forward, her back straight despite the trembling in her legs. I am Sandra Manifo. His wife. These are his children. She gestured to Chidi, whose face still bore the crusted blood from his wound, to Ede clutching Obi's hand, to Amora now clinging to Emeka's leg like a monkey. The videographer, either from professionalism or sheer morbid fascination, kept filming as Adanna's father, a thick-necked man in a navy agbada that strained across his belly, stormed forward. You lying gold digger. Emeka said he was divorced. Emeka grabbed Sandra's arm hard enough to bruise, hissing through clenched teeth, you pay for this. Then louder, for the crowd, she's my cousin's widow. Mentally unstable. Someone call security. Chidi spat at his father's feet. Liar. You left us to starve while you play big man in Lagos. Chaos erupted. Adanna's slap left red marks on Emeka's surprised face. Her brothers physically threw Sandra and the children out, but not before dozens of phones captured every humiliating moment. By nightfall, #Lagos wedding scandal was trending nationwide. In a cheap motel room paid for by a sympathetic journalist, Sandra counted their remaining money, 3,200 naira, barely enough for 2 more nights. Her battered phone buzzed incessantly with threats from unknown numbers, you will die if you don't leave Lagos. We know where you are. That night, as the children slept fitfully on the lumpy mattress, men kicked down their door. Machetes glinted in the dim light as shadows lunged at them. Sandra reacted instinctively, throwing the boiling water from their thermos kettle, scalding one attacker who howled in pain. Chidi smashed a bottle over another's head, the glass shattering in a cascade of sharp fragments. They escaped through the back window as the motel erupted in flames behind them, the children's screams lost in the cacophony of the Lagos night. Meanwhile, in an upscale bar in Victoria Island, Emeka drowned his humiliation in expensive whiskey. Adanna's brother slid into the seat beside him, his voice deceptively calm. My sister wants her dowry back. Every naira. He placed a heavy hand on Emeka's shoulder. But first, handle your trash. The pistol he pressed into Emeka's trembling hand was cold and heavy. Bleeding and barefoot, Sandra collapsed at a roadside food stall in a neighborhood even Lagosians avoided. The owner, Mama Nkechi, took one look at the battered woman and children and ushered them into the back room without questions. "I saw your story online," she muttered as she cleaned Chidi's wounds with Ogagoro. "That dog of a man." The next morning, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up outside the ramshackle stall. Adanna stepped out, her sunglasses failing to hide her swollen eyes. "I didn't know," she whispered, pressing a thick envelope into Sandra's hands, 500,000 naira in crisp bills. "Take your children far away from here. Emeka won't stop coming for you now." But Sandra was done running. The journey back to Umocha was quieter, the children shell-shocked into silence. The village welcomed them with mixed reactions, some praised Sandra's courage, others whispered behind their hands. Emeka's uncle was waiting at her family compound. "You humiliated your husband in public," the old man raged, spittle flying from his lips. "You have no respect." When night fell, torches approached through the palm trees. Emeka stood at her gate, the pistol glinting in the moonlight, his eyes wild with drink and fury. "You ruined my life," he slurred, cocking the weapon. "Now I ruin yours." As Emeka raised the gun, the village youth emerged from the shadows like avenging spirits, machetes in hand. Chaik, Sandra's childhood friend who had loved her quietly for years, stepped forward. "Touch her and die," he said simply. Emeka laughed wildly, the sound bordering on madness. "You all betrayed me." His shot went wide as the mob descended, their blades flashing in the moonlight. Sandra watched as they beat him bloody, his cries growing weaker. Then she stepped forward, placing a hand on Chaik's raised arm. "Enough," she said. "Let God judge him." Emeka survived, but with a permanent limp and missing teeth. The village council banished him that very night, warning he would be killed if he ever returned. Sandra used Adanna's money wisely, a bigger stall at the market, proper school fees for all 4 children, even the beginnings of a real concrete house to replace their mud hut. But at night, she still checked the locks twice, and the sound of a motorbike approaching too fast still made her heart race. 5 years later, on a rainy market day, a bent old man appeared at Sandra's thriving provision store. At first, she didn't recognize the skeletal figure with cloudy eyes and scarred hands. Then he spoke, and her blood ran cold. "I have nowhere to go," Emeka croaked, his voice ruined by cheap alcohol and regret. Sandra served him a bowl of pepper soup in silence. "Eat outside," she said finally, her voice steady. "My children shouldn't see you." As he slapped the spicy broth at the back of her shop, his tears fell into the bowl like bitter seasoning. Sandra turned away, busying herself with inventory. Some vows, once broken, can never be remade.